So today I'm talking about a U0402 code, what it is and how you go about fixing it. And so what is a U0402 code? Well, it's an invalid data receipt from TCM. And what does this mean? Well, there's different computer control modules inside of a vehicle. You could have an engine control module or ECM. You could have a powertrain control module or PCM. You could have an ABS module. And there's also what's called a TCM, which is the transmission control module that basically just controls all the transmission functions. And it does this by reading information from different sensors and other computer control modules. And then it can control things like shifting or when the vehicle goes into drive or reverse or different things like this. And when you get a U0402 code, other computer control modules like the ECM or PCM is seeing that the information coming from the TCM is not correct and that some kind of issues going on with it. And so it's going to have to be troubleshooted to know why. And one thing to note about a U0402 code is it can be kind of difficult to troubleshoot sometimes. If you check all the basic things and it doesn't fix the problem, then it can get kind of difficult since you could be dealing with computer control modules and wiring and possibly sensors and things like this. So just keep in mind that this can be kind of difficult to troubleshoot sometimes. Another thing to mention is that if you're getting other codes, be sure to pay attention to that because that can help guide you to what the problem might be. For example, if you're getting like a P0500 code, vehicle speed sensor A circuit, then very likely the transmission has a bad speed sensor and is throwing everything off. But basically, if you're getting other codes, be sure to pay attention to that because that can help point you to what the problem is. And so what are some possible causes of a U0402 code? Well, the first thing that could cause this is a bad battery. If the battery's dead, if it's not charged up correctly, then that's going to cause problems. All these computer control modules, they need a good, stable power supply in order to work properly. And if they don't, then that's going to cause issues. And this is going to include charging problems like the alternator's not working correctly. If you have a multimeter, you can't check the alternator output. Basically, to check the alternator, you start up the vehicle and you check what the voltage is at the battery terminals. And most vehicles, the alternator will be outputting like 13.5 to 14.5 volts. It can vary. You might have to look it up to be sure what your vehicle alternator rated output is. But 13.5 to 14.5 volts is very common. And if it's not running at this, if it's running too low or if it's running higher, then you know you have an alternator issue. But the first thing that could cause this is a bad battery or there's some kind of charging issue going on. And the next thing that could cause this is that there's some kind of issue going on inside the wiring. And this would be something like an open, a short, a blown fuse, or a bad ground wire, or something along these lines. Sometimes these transmission control modules are up inside the engine compartment. So sometimes they could get grease on them or different things like this on these connectors where they plug in. And if that happens, that could cause issues. Also, all these computer modules, they need a good ground or else it could throw them off. It could just cause them to have problems. If you have like a jumper wire, you could jumper usually to the case and then you could jumper to a good ground and then you could just see if the problem goes away. That's a quick way just to check to see if you do have a bad ground because a bad ground wire can cause issues. Also, be sure to check your fuses, especially anything labeled like TCM or anything like that, because if you have a blown fuse, then that's going to cause problems. And it's also possible that a wire inside the wiring harness has an open or a short and is causing problems. And so if you could go around and check those wires and be sure they don't look like they're damaged or anything like this. If you have a multimeter and schematics, you can trace them around and check them and different things along these lines. But the next thing on the list is going to be a wiring issue. And the next thing on the list is going to be a bad transmission sensor. And the transmission has a lot of sensors in it. It can have pressure sensors and speed sensors and different things like this. Usually if you have a bad sensor, you're going to get other codes. For example, if this transmission speed sensor went bad, you would get like a P0500 code, vehicle speed sensor A circuit. So if you are getting other codes, be sure to pay attention to that. But the next thing on the list is going to be a bad transmission sensor. The next thing that could cause this is that transmission control module has just gone bad and just needs to be replaced. There's some different ways to go about testing these control modules. One thing you can do is that if you could go up around that transmission control module and you could just check to see if you smell a burnt smell, because sometimes when these computer modules fail, they actually get burn spots on them, so you'll be able to smell it. And if you open them up, you'll be able to see it. They don't always get burn spots. They can't fail and not get any burn spots, so keep that in mind. But sometimes they do, and if they do have burn spots, then you know that board's bad and needs to be replaced. But the next thing on the list is going to be a bad TCM. And the last thing on the list is that there's going to be some kind of transmission failure. Something's gone wrong with that transmission that's just causing problems. And this could really vary. There's a lot of things that could go wrong with that transmission. If you're not getting any other codes, and if your transmission has a dipstick, many newer vehicles no longer have a dipstick, but if you do have a transmission dipstick, you can't pull it out. Be sure that the level is correct. Check the color of the fluid. Be sure it doesn't look like it's really dark or murky or anything like this, that there's no metal shavings on that dipstick or anything along these lines, because the next thing that could cause this is that transmission has some kind of failure in it and it needs to be fixed. And so that's basically it. I just wanted to give a basic overview. of how you go about fixing a vehicle with the U0402 code. If you have anything to add, please comment down below. If you have any questions, ask me and I'll try to answer them. If this video helps you, please click like, please click subscribe, and have a good day.